Hey, everybody, and welcome to CSM Mastermind. My name is Andrew Marks. I am the co-founder of Success Hacker and our success coaching training program. We're back for our monthly live webcast today focused on playbooks. Now, this free learning event is brought to you by Success Coaching, the world leader in customer success, professional development training with more than 6,000 graduates globally. Our popular virtual boot camps run monthly. We offer 12-week coaching cohorts 3 times a year with our coaching calls for our final cohorts of 2021 beginning tomorrow. We have an accredited online CSM certification program and a number of standalone courses, all taught by industry experts. You can find out more about our training programs at successcoaching.co. And Ashley's going to drop a link and a coupon code for our cohorts that are starting this week into chat. And just a reminder that voting is open for the CS 100. The short list of 200 is out. Voting runs through next Friday, October 1st. So make sure you cast your votes for the top 100 in customer success for 2021. Funny thing, all 3 of our guests happen to have made the cut. So the pressure is on today for a good showing, guys. Okay. Now, for those new to the series, this is a live and unscripted discussion where we dig into a single topic that is relevant to customer success. This opening is the only scripted element of the entire webinar. Everything else is this free-flowing exchange of information, ideas, stories, examples, and best practices. We aim to pick topics that are going to be practical and useful to the broader customer success community. So I encourage you to suggest topics or panelists for these events. I'm also always looking for people to join me one-on-one for my Moments of Truth podcast series. So if you've got ideas or something to say, reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn. Drop me a note with your interest and an email address, and I'll get back to you. The schedule for our upcoming events can also be found at successcoaching.co. Click on that events tab at the top to find out more. As always, we'll post a replay of this webinar along with a transcription on our website early next week. Now, there's a lot of thought leadership out there, along with a lot of theories about how to deliver customer success. The Mastermind series allows us to focus on the practical and give you real-world advice, best practices, techniques, and shared experiences from, from those out in the wild practicing customer success on a daily basis. And to do that, we invite 3 panelists to join me for a roundtable discussion. These are people who are great at their craft, and we ask them to share their experiences and their perspectives. Now, this learning event is for you, and we will be taking questions, so get ready to use that Q&A functionality at the bottom of your Zoom window to ask or upvote a question. We also have Tracy monitoring LinkedIn Live, so any questions posted will be relayed to us as well. Also, please remember to use chat for commentary, not questions. And without further ado, I'd like our panelists to introduce themselves to y'all, talk a bit about who they are and what they do. Let's get started, as usual, in alphabetical order with Josh.
All right, greetings, everybody. I'm Josh Rosenthal, the co-founder of CloudSploit, which is an open source cloud security posture management tool that I brought from concept through exit via customer success. That means we did not have a sales team. The customer journey went from marketing right into customer success, add value, and then reap value. And so we used automation to facilitate all of that and to figure out which of the cattle are actually pets and ephemerally when they are. And that's that's one of my more recent works in customer success. I go back in the security industry an inch. I guess the only other thing I should say is thoughts are my own, and so I don't want to come in as a representative of any of the companies that I've been working for.
All right. Thanks, Josh. I don't think we've had an example, a cow example yet. So thanks for changing things up for us. Kevin, you're up.
Hey everyone, my name is Kevin Leonore. I am a customer success manager for Zoom. I am also a content writer and mentorship lead for CS Insider. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks. And finally, Ty.
Yeah, hey, I'm Ty Raya. Currently, I am an enterprise CSM at Terminus in the MarTech space. Prior to that, I was the director of CS at Jive Software, so in the collaboration space. And generally, I'm just kind of CS obsessed since I discovered it back in 2009. It's kind of been my obsession ever since.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your obsession with all of us today. And once again, we all appreciate your time, all of you. So now let's get to the topic for today. The so-called purpose of Playbooks is to build a scalable process. This could be a playbook for elements of the customer journey that you want to make sure you get covered, or even for your own self. A predictable, repeatable approach to driving customer success. Playbooks are frameworks that include the set of steps that should be taken to achieve a desired objective. A playbook acts as a guide or quality control to help ensure that a process is carried out in the same manner each time. Playbooks can be as simple as a punch list or extremely detailed. The objective is to help you improve your efficiency and accountability. It doesn't mean everyone needs to be robotic and do or say the exact same thing, but these are the things that must be done in order to achieve a set of objectives, whether for your customer or for yourself. So the first question I have for my panel is, are playbooks all that, or are they totally overrated?
Definitely not overrated, because from what I've been seeing with CSMs is that they'll usually just advocate their use cases for their product, and that is basic customer success. But when you're putting together a playbook or a campaign and you're building those use cases around achieving desired outcomes, that is advanced customer success. And those playbooks allow us to leverage these plays or campaigns with other customers by highlighting the results of similar companies who have deployed the campaign. It allows them to practice these plays with customers to help them each time and improve upon those processes. And then, as the old adage goes, you teach a man to fish, but I also believe in customer success that adage doesn't go far enough. You teach a man to fish is not a play. Teaching a man to fish and then taking him fishing and then benchmarking their fishing and improving on their fishing skills, that is a play. And only then, when we launch those plays, will we have the value of the discipline that we're trying to realize.
So what you're saying is it's better than playing whack-a-mole.
Better than playing whack-a-mole. And I've also developed great strategies on whack-a-mole each time that I've launched a play on whack-a-mole.
I think a lot of people find they find themselves at whack-a-mole stage, right? And they may be there right now and listening, going, we're at whack-a-mole stage.
Yeah, you're bringing up a good point, and that's the idea of scalability through repeatability, and recognizing that playbooks are where repeatability meets human activity. Right? We're not here to go and create human robots that do that thing. We're here to go and have them learn from the past and work in a more expected and methodical manner.
I like that you brought up scalability. I mean, scalability should be part of everything. We should always be thinking about scalability, whether you're doing, no touch, which is it's all about scalability, or you're doing high touch.
Yeah, and I would argue that you're doing playbooks all the time if you know it or not, in your life, every day at work, right? It's really a matter of, are you documenting that? So if you're doing something like, let's say a client reaches out to you, regardless of the circumstance, and you respond, by default, that action itself could be a playbook, right? You just follow those through to beginning steps. So what the initial thing is to the result that you want, right? And oftentimes, if you've never done playbooks before, a great place to start is just to reverse engineer what you're already doing really well. So find a case where you saved an account or you just did something you thought was really cool, right? Start from your success, work backwards, and just document it. Great place to start if you've never done it before.
I love this.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, I love what Ty said about that you're running plays whether you know it or not, and every time that you're improving, even something as little as, like, let's say I wanted to buy peanut butter over at a grocery store, and that's my call to action every single time. Every month I've got to buy peanut butter. But if I also know that they have a sale at the end of every month, I'm changing my processes, and now I'm managing to buy more peanut butter now because I know about that sale that happens every month. That's now changing a call to action and making it a repeatable play that has potential benefits. So
well, you're either buying more peanut butter or you're saving money,
exactly,
but you're still getting your desired outcome, right? More peanut butter and for less. So now we got peanut butter and cows. This is all right. We're
one of the things that you're talking about here that I'm hearing is the ability for you to go and figure out what your success criteria is. This is classic, customer success, and then going and figuring out the steps you need to do to go and achieve that. You're recognizing what triggers that event, and then you're applying the proper playbook in your life and making playbooks real life.
Right.
I don't know about you guys, but I tend to break my playbooks down into two sections, right? Like proactive and reactive, right? So proactive would be a customer hitting a milestone or hitting like a first big success, things like that. And then reactive, like signs of churn or, losing my champion or point of contact, right? Is that typical for you guys, or do you have any others that you do besides those?
That's actually a good call out because one of the things that I also program into my playbooks too is at the end of the play, we do have to be reactive in some sort of way because we're looking for the results of launching that play. So depending on what direction the customer responds to that play, that launches a whole another play that we can launch based on falling behind in their benchmarking or not having a great response to the benchmarking. So we can go ahead and launch that. Or if they're actually doing very well in their benchmarking, then we can look for ways to exploit some of the advantages that they have to yield even more success. So you have to really look at it as a proactive and reactive way.
There's a little bit of a gap potentially between there, depending upon your access to data. And this is a concept that I call pre-action, where I'm able to kind of predict where we're going from here. Though the choices may be many, hopefully I can bring them down to a few other than some outlying situations. And in doing that, when applying it back to playbooks in this case, one of the things I try to do is bring my playbooks to be atomic, right? So if I'm trying to get from A to B, there may be a few waypoints in between, and I can go and start deploying these playbooks in concert, but sequentially.
Yeah, I like sectioning them off. It's stepping stones, right? It's all about hitting those, and what I've typically done for my clients as well as what I've done in my own, as when I was an operational executive building these things out. Is focus on those key milestones that move us once again closer to that desired objective. It's a lot easier to explain. It's a lot easier to get people to follow. It's a lot easier to maintain, right? Because it's not just about this isn't a Ronco oven. You don't set it and forget it, right? There you go. Look at that. Cows and peanut butter and Ron Popeil, by the way, just recently passed away. I don't know if you know that. Remember the guy, the king of late night, as seen on TV crap.
He's the spray on hair guy that I could have used.
Just passed away a few months ago.
All right. Well, I'm going to tie this into customer success because we're all going giving a crosscut. And ready for this? When I talk about what a customer success manager is, I talk about one of the things, by the way, that I like about the role is that we do so many things, right? And in some ways, we're part marketer. In some ways, we're part carnival barker, right? And then, of course, we need to be working about the project and implementation and all these different levels. But when you talk about the late night infomercial, but wait, there's more. I mean, that is what we do as customer success managers, which is to try to bring people along our intended customer journey for them.
Yeah, exactly. But back to my original point was that you can't set it, because I totally diverged there with the whole Ron Popeil thing. But you can't set it and forget it, right? So you create your playbook, you create whatever you want to call it, playbook, methodology, process, steps. It doesn't really matter. It's all the same thing, right? Predictable, repeatable approach. It's not set it and forget it though, right? And that's why it's really important that I think everybody, from the ops person to the manager that wants to put in the journey to every individual CSM, is looking at what they're doing, analyzing that, feeding that back to the team, because customer success is a team sport.
I mean, just like a success plan, it should be a living, breathing document that we're learning from constantly, that we're adjusting. even if you're doing something that, is tech touch, it
Yeah.
can still be a living, breathing document. You might have automated steps or triggers or AI in place, right? But either way, it's never something static.
And so we have a tool, and I was going to share it. And I know you guys might have some examples of playbooks, but I want to, because we're talking about the tool right now. I just want to share with folks what this tool is really quickly, and I'm going to have Ashley drop a link of it into chat for you to download your own copy. But let me open up this and share my screen. Boom, boom, boom. And some of you may be familiar with this because we freely give it out. This is our customer success engagement blueprint. It is it's a tool, and it's a pretty comprehensive tool. It includes an overview tab here that explains what it is, and this is an example of a high touch process. But it is meant to help you lay out really the infrastructure of your customer journey. Right. This is the tactical steps that go into creating that pretty customer journey that gets put up on a wall somewhere. And we divide it into acquisition, onboarding, and then the third phase, earn, enable, adopt, renew, navigate, where Ty, this has and Kevin, this has time-based moments, so things that are predictable, and then event-based moments, things that aren't predictable. And then all of this. And then sitting behind this is an actual playbook builder tool that you can use with some examples of some playbooks that you can take a look at, that talks about each different task and the ownership, the KPIs, automations, platforms, triggers, things like that. So Ashley, you've dropped that link, right? I would encourage anybody who's trying to pull together, get their hands around playbooks, will find that tool useful. So do you guys have some examples of playbooks that you've developed, that you've built, that have made that noticeable impact, positive impact, either with your teams or with your customers?
Yeah, real quick before we launch into that, I just want to say one thing about the document you just shared that I left out of my really early playbooks was a RACI chart.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that often gets overlooked when we're building out playbooks, is who to contact when, where the buck stops in each department or with each product. So yeah, just to call out there that is pretty instrumental. And I wish I had learned that earlier on.
Well, and that's why we provide this type of stuff to folks that we've used over. I mean, that RACI matrix and the associated playbook builder is something that we have put together over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And
it shows. Right?
Yeah. So anybody have any examples or stories about playbooks that you put in place that had a particularly significant impact on your customers, on your people, internal or external?
Well, something that I created back when I was at Ring Central was a kind of like a success progression, because typically what I would usually do when I enter into an account, I would model our success plan based on the immediate needs of the customer. Whatever they say is important is what I want to focus on first. And that's a great way to start. The problem is that once you've achieved their goal, and if they don't tell you what their next goal is, where do you go from there? How do you go ahead and build off of the success that you've already achieved through the initial success plan? So what I essentially did was I built these plays that are based off of particular desired outcomes that build off of each other. So if we're working with somebody that is interested in increasing their revenue and needs a communication system that's going to help them with those things, then we're able to tie in some of the customer marketing capabilities that we have in our platform that can help build that lead generation. So now, as we've already work to limit their average handle time, limit their abandonment, so that way they're getting to the customers and they're selling those customers on the first call. We look to generate leads. So that was one of the things that we built over at Ring Central, and one of the things that now.
And what was the result of that? I mean, did that noticeably change? Did that have a noticeable impact on either renewals, expansion, noticeable impact on your customer sat, NPS? All of those, some of those, none of those?
A lot of that, and most especially when it came to the adoption rates for those marketing departments, because now I've already been able to sell the value of Ring Central, and now here at Zoom, we're able to sell that value. I'm able to get a lot more buy-in with that marketing team now that maybe already has some licenses with us, that we can now look into expanding the amount of licenses that they have because as a result of launching those plays.
So predictable, repeatable approach to, that are constantly streamlining, pays off. It pays off.
One of the things that we're also talking about here is looking at these metrics, our leading metrics. And one of the things that I've found in working with Playbooks is looking at time to first value and then time to that first success goal. When I'm using a playbook and putting all the steps in front of them, almost like a leave behind, that you might have on a piece of paper. They understand that you have a plan. They understand the bigger thing. But one of the things that I like to do in my playbooks is to go and figure out how we get them to the end as fast as we can, almost a ready, fire, aim methodology of deployment. Get somebody going. Then we're able to get a larger group of people looking to go and do that. So we get that time to first value, we get that time to meeting that success criteria. And that, when you can do those things quickly, you can see success coming on. Now, this being said, when I'm dealing with enterprise deployments, where it's not just like you come in and set this product up and are done. These are much more complex engagements. So your mileage may vary on this one.
Yeah, but your prioritization methodology should always be, okay, how do we accelerate time to value? Right. That's where we start. Right. And it doesn't need to be. And the other thing, by the way, which I think is really important to state here, is every single play doesn't need to be freaking perfect. Okay. It doesn't need to be pretty. It could start with a punch list. Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Right. But start doing something. Right. At your point, you talk about leading indicators. You can be using the things that you start learning about to improve the process and to track things and to get a better gauge on and influence your customer, because churn and expansion and renewals and all that stuff are trailing indicators, and NPS are all trailing indicators, right? Making sure that we're doing the right things in the right ways at the right times are the leading things that we can be doing to affect those. The top things we can be doing to affect those trailing indicators. Ty, you had something.
Yeah, I was going to say, for example, if you're not someone who's necessarily building the playbooks for your department, one thing you can do is look to see what triggers maybe don't have action behind them currently. So for example, if your customer hits a milestone, like let's say they just renewed or they just added seat licenses, what do you do for them, right? Do you set up some swag? Do you have an email that goes out? So I know for myself, in a previous role, right, I was sending out personally, right, like an email, and I was sending out swag, right, as a thank you. And as I moved into my new role, right, which is now a MarTech team, so they think about these things, right? Those are all automatic triggers. So I don't have to do anything other than add a little personal touch if I want to. So like that's a great place to start looking at things if you're not necessarily the one building it from point A to to Z.
Right.
I'll also touch on that as well, because as the only person here that didn't previously have a title of Director of Customer Success. So you mentioned, Ty, if you aren't building a playbook for your organization, for your team. The thing that I will recommend for those CSMs that are in the room right now, the great thing about customer success is that you're given a lot of autonomy. So if there are processes in your company that are not defined, you are empowered to help build those processes and in effect also start building the culture of the customer success organization. So working a job where responsibilities and expectations are not defined can be pretty frustrating. And there may be a lot of CSMs that are listening right now that are in that situation. But you have the ability to demonstrate a need for process improvement in your organization, gain the buy-in from all the stakeholders in the organization, and then build the process to allow that scalability in your company. You have that power, even though you don't have that title of director or manager.
Yeah. So,
hey, Ashley, can you drop the link in for the customer success engagement blueprint into chat again, please?
Yeah. So, one of the things that we're talking about here is this one team, as you said earlier, Andrew, and how you talked about marketing and working with customer success, and recognizing that this playbook can both be externally, like I mentioned before, that leave behind, but also it can be complemented by internal processes as well, sharing information across teams. When does customer marketing get involved, and what do they send when? It could be swag as a great way to go and know, especially now, how to reach the person after they might offboard. But also it's to go and keep everyone working, the company working in concert.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Josh. Right, like one of the cool things that I love about CS is you're right. We work with every department. I literally can't think of a department I don't work with on a regular basis. That's why that racing chart is so useful, and your playbook should reflect that, right? If you have a playbook that's solely your department, yeah, that would be my first red flag of I want to go in and start auditing that to see what other departments we can get involved and how.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why we originally built that tool in Google Sheets, because at the time it was the only technology we could use where people could collaborate.
Yeah.
Right now you can use Excel apparently, but Google Sheets, I mean, and that's the beauty of it, right? This is not something that you go off into a corner and do by yourself. You might do that to put some initial stakes in the ground, but you want that especially with the nature of that tool around the RACI matrix is super important, right? Because we shouldn't be creating process in a vacuum. Even if it's just to share with others, hey, here's what I do. I remember a client in Vegas that I did some work for, and we did an executive workshop, full day, 10-hour days, and pulling all these people in from all different subject matter areas in the company into their boardroom. There's like 15, 20 of us, and their boardroom was next to basically a giant room where everybody sat at these folding tables, right? Early stage startup. They all sat at folding tables facing each other. There wasn't even cubes. And we're walking through their customer journey, or what their customer journey ideally should be. And I'm talking to all these different leaders from all these different organizations. And this is the reason why we always did our consulting, including everybody, not just customer success. And they're literally people that sit next to each other in their bullpen and don't know what the other person does, or didn't realize that, oh, that's a program.
This is maybe on the lines of more of a personal playbook. One of the first things I did when I started my new job is I set up one-on-ones with pretty much every team, with different people in different departments, to know what they did, who they are, what processes they prefer, right? And I documented all of it. And now today, I was talking to someone I worked with who said, it feels like you've been here a lot longer than you have, particularly in other departments. It's because I did that. I didn't ask permission. I just went in and did it. And I think that's really important. To remember, you don't need permission to set up one-on-one with someone, and don't be scared if they have a title that's above you. Like, most companies, everyone's willing to take 15 minutes of your time or of their time to get to know you a little bit more, right?
That's a great personal playbook too, and that's something that I used in my 30, 60, 90 back when I was at Ring Central, and I'm currently using over at Zoom right now. And it also ties really well back to not just personal playbook, but also when you're creating the playbooks as well, because you can ask poignant questions with those stakeholders. One of my favorite questions to ask is, what do you wish that CSMs would do better, or what do you wish CSMs would know know about what you do to help with your job? And that helps me start to focus on some of those things to help build that playbook and make it a seamless transfer of ownership between each phase.
What we're talking about here is actually to increase the visibility of where each customer is along their journey, right? We have this journey that we want to get them through. Their waypoints may vary along the way, but now everybody can see it internally and understand where they are. And that's one of these things that playbooks do, even if it's just a Google sheet where you're like, hey, they've done this and now they're on that.
Yeah, exactly. We got a bunch of questions, and we're going to get to those in just a moment. Check them out if you haven't asked a question. But there's a question on this list that rings with you that that really you'd like to you want to learn more about. Make sure you upvote those things because I go from the top down for priority. But before we do that, Josh, you wanted to share a playbook example that you had.
Right. In fact, I did. I don't know if you have that.
I have it. I'm ready to cast it. Just confirm for me which one do we want?
In this case, let's go in and we've been talking so much about nice stuff like onboarding. Let's go and talk about the sad stuff like a churn risk. So one of the things is the last slide in a deck that I had shared with you. And what I have here is a nope, I don't think yes. Okay.
Is that it?
Yep. So yeah, just go and present that, put it in present mode if you would. And over on the top right.
Present mode. Is that better?
There you are.
Awesome.
So yeah, so this is one of the things that in this case I set up a pre-mortem. Now, by the way, the pre-mortem can be done before there's actually a stated churn risk, right? When you're looking at your leading indicators, when you're just simply sitting around getting nervous, what happens if this big account, important account goes away? And so this actually touches on several of the topics that we've actually talked about here. One is just having a plan, right? Just stating as rudimentary as it might be. Now, in this case, you can go and click into each, well, not on the slide, but you can click into each one and see some food for thought in each step. Right. But part of it is showing where they are, right? There's visibility into that you've given it thought. Metrics you might see. Two is in this, you're having one of the things that we have here is to go and get other people involved, right? One team, the idea of that, customer centrism.
Yeah.
And then also the part at the end is the afterwards is to improve that process, right? So we're talking about having it and I think Ty, you called it a living, breathing document, right? Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. We all gain knowledge by, Kevin, as you said earlier, by going and doing it and resharing that knowledge. And that's reflected in that idea. What do you do to prevent churn? Or once you have a churn on your hand, what do you do?
Yeah, we should be learning from every one of those things constantly. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that with us, Josh. Okay, how about we jump into some of these questions?
There's some fun ones in here. I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, Patrick, thank you for the question. Patrick asks, what are some common metrics you use to determine whether a playbook is successful or not? It's a lot to unpack there.
Oh,
I mean, it's very
take that?
unique to the playbook, right?
Go for it, Ty.
Yeah, go for it.
I was gonna say, like, there's no commonality per se, right? It's specific to your company. So like for your company, it might be seat licenses. For mine, it might be a trigger, right? Like, did they, successfully install this package, right? So it's really unique to what industry or what, company you're working for.
But don't you think it's tied to, it's tied to whatever the desired outcome is?
Yeah.
Right. It's
absolutely.
tied to, right. So, whether that's a milestone along the way or that's the ultimate desired outcome, right? What are the things that need to get done in order for the customer to move from point A to point B? Whatever those things are, become, the ones that are most important and moving closer to that objective should be the things that you should be metering. Yeah.
And I mean, you might have playbooks that are 90% the same, right? Across the board. It's that 10% uniqueness to, what that playbook is that really determines, what you need to do with the account. That was a terrible sentence, but hopefully you guys understood what I meant.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Josh, you want to add anything?
Yeah. When I look at a play in a playbook and a playbook in its entirety, right? I look at the email that I might template to be associated with a step or even an entire playbook. One of the ways that I try to do is to try to just keep it pithy, right? And also know what is the one thing that we're trying to do.
Pithy?
That's a great word. Yeah, it's a great word.
I'm impressed because I don't hear pithy very often.
Yeah. To keep it succinct,
yes,
right, and short. My belief is that people don't like to read, right? When I influence knowledge base design, I try to get it very granular, and then of course go and create a knowledge base article that has links for people to go and learn more, right? But same with email. What is the one thing that I want out of this email? Because if I have too many calls to action, it's just like a marketer.
Yeah. I love that.
Yep.
Net it out. It was if there's any of my former direct reports on this webinar listening to this, they will be familiar with that call out to them. Net things out, right?
I could also
add anything to add, Kevin?
Well. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So when it comes to some of the common metrics, I'm pretty sure you're looking for something more customer centric, but it is important for you to recognize what are the metrics that you want internally and also with your customer as well. So just like Ty was talking about, some of the common metrics, it's going to depend on what is the play and what are we hoping to get out of it? Are we hoping to improve on adoption of a key feature? Are we hoping to gain more interest in a particular product? Are we hoping to get more licenses? That's the internal side of things. But when it comes to the customer, it's a little bit different. Now the metrics can change, but how it's measured is different because every company has a different criteria for what they consider successful. You may have somebody that wants to double their revenue over the next year. You may have somebody that wants to only increase by 5% year over year. So just know that the metric itself may be the same, but how it's measured may be a little bit different. And your goal is to actually find out from the customer what they consider to be a success. It's not your job to define success for them.
So Kevin, if you're writing a playbook, in this case, trigger number one would be discover, like that discovery phase. Go find out what success means to your customer, right?
Yeah, that's right out of the gate. You have to do that.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, if anyone's writing a playbook, there's step one for everyone, right?
Yeah, that's good, right? Yeah. And actually, as part of that, actually, step kind of 1A is that handoff, right? Yeah. So if you don't have any playbooks and you're scratching your head going, where do I start? Take it from us. The handoff from sales and then the discovery process is where you start, right? Because that creates all the opportunity down the line.
I don't know about you guys, but in my experience, right, the discovery session with sales, so the person who signed maybe the contract and the person that you're actually working with, they might have vastly different goals and expectations. And so it's usually a whole new discovery session, which is also fun.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I face, especially when dealing with the larger companies. I know that we have a variety of fields here, a variety of customer success for different sizes of organizations and complexity of deployments.
Yeah.
In this situation, for how I deal, I look at what are the people interested in from the user point of view, from the management level, and then kind of from that executive / buyer level, right? As you deal here, you deal with more functions. As you get here, it's a little bit more on the analysis. And as you go up to the top, it's about return on investment, right? And so I try to think about these things and talk and figure out, there's a lot of, again, psychology that goes into to all of this. What, when the person asks what's in it for me, and I'm trying to work them through the playbook from whatever I need from them, I try to figure that out, trying to slice the cake into 3 layers.
That's a great call, Josh. No.
Awesome. We got another question here from Patrick, which was also voted up. And I think some of it was answered there, but Ty wants to jump in on this one. What are some general guidelines you use to decide on whether a playbook is necessary or not? So we first started with, we've already talked about, okay, this is bare minimum right here, that handoff, right? But there's, to Patrick's question, there's so many different things that you could do. And I've already thrown out fast time to value, but what do you focus on?
I mean, for me, my first trigger, if I want to put together a playbook, is if I'm doing anything repeatedly, right? So, and any process that I'm doing on a regular basis, either a handover for onboarding or sales, or the way I respond to a customer that has, gone dark, right? Those are my triggers to know, hey, I probably need a playbook here.
Yeah, we talked about scalability right out of the gate, right? We should always be building to scale.
One other thing that my biggest kind of mantra when it comes to building playbooks is, if it has to be asked, then it has to be documented. So if you're in a Slack group, or you're in your Zoom chat, or your Microsoft Teams, and somebody says, hey, how do we do this again? It needs to be documented.
Yeah.
And one great thing too is, if you do collaborate in those tools, they usually have some kind of a search feature where you're able to search for when that question was asked in the past, and you'll be able to see somebody who responded way back when on how to do that. If you see that, that is your cue to go ahead and document that and put that in knowledge base somewhere.
Yeah, regardless of what the knowledge of Wiki, Confluence, whatever, we use Confluence, and we start with, like I said before, we start with check punch list. Do this, do this, do this, do this. Once again, it doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Yeah, you really do need to let go of that perfection. I think that's something that does hold people back. This has been brought up a couple times. When I talk about things, I'm like, 80%. Can we reach 80%? That would be fantastic. 50% is great. And that same idea of letting go of perfection, by the way, is sometimes especially with the customer facing playbooks, people sometimes say to me, well, they didn't even do it. Right? I know, no problem. I'm just here to soften the earth, right? They know that I have a plan, right? We can go and work through it with them. And maybe they've read some of the things, gotten some of the knowledge, and when we meet with them, it'll be easier to keep them focused and moving forward, right?
That's also a great call out too there, Josh. Sometimes when you have a playbook, you really need to have everybody's involvement in order for the play to be successful. And you will have those pitfalls where some people are just not as interested in running the play as you would like them to. That is something that you also need to document in your evolving, in every time that you're evolving that particular play. Note anytime that pitfalls happen, any barriers to success, and look for ways to try to mitigate that. Maybe you didn't sell the value of why we need to do this process well enough the first iteration, and maybe we need to look at.
There we go. That was odd. You stopped the recording, Kevin. God, that totally threw me off. All right, let's move on. Sorry. All right, let's get to the next question. Thank you, by the way, Patrick, for the questions. Casey asks, as CSMs, are you developing your own playbooks in the silo and sharing out to your teams, or are these being developed by your leadership team based on what they are seeing as a need? And I would encourage anybody to share their opinion in chat. But guys, how have you, I personally, I've seen it both ways, and I've encouraged it both ways. What have you seen? What have you done?
My answer here is really quick, which is yes. All of the above.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's basically my answer too.
Good. Yeah. Good.
Well, let me share my approach to this, and it's really going to depend on the headcount and the bandwidth of your department, because your leadership team may be spread so thin that they can't guide you on this, and it's part of the reason why you don't have that play built is because they don't have the bandwidth to focus on that play.
Right. So you do it, right?
So you do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then if the rest of your team has some time, you can go ahead and bring them involved into the process of developing the playbook. Or if not, develop it yourself, get some buy-in from other CSMs, and then just keep iterating and improving on it.
Yeah, excellent. Josh, Ty, anything to add before we move on?
I mean, I could probably talk about that alone for an hour. So
we'll
get to some other questions.
Yeah. All right. And by the way, it's 10 minutes to the hour. We do run to 15 minutes past the hour. So first of all, if there's any questions in that list that you really want to get to, if you have to bail at the top of the hour, upvote them or ask them now. Ty, you want to add something to that, or was Kevin's?
Kevin is more than sufficient. Yeah.
All right. Excellent. All right, let's so once again, thank you, Casey, for that. Next question comes from Tammy, which I think we've answered it, and I'm going to ask Ashley to drop the link once again into chat. Are there standard components for each playbook? Any good examples or templates that can be shared? There's a template for you that should be. I mean, everybody we've shared it with said they found it useful. So I would encourage you to use that. We're actually going to be releasing later on this year in our new customer success, our certified customer success leader training program. We should have level 1 out by the end of the year. We actually are going to have a course on how to leverage the CSEB to create your initial or to create a customer journey as well as playbook. So. But you should be able to figure it out on your own. Sarah asks, what data do you use to assess reactive and proactive plays? And it looks like Ty wants to jump in on this.
Yes. So, I mean, what data do I use? I'm really using triggers again. So my reactive plays are triggers that are not positive.
Right.
And proactive are usually ones that are moving us closer to what we might define as success, even though that's kind of an evolving thing at all times, right? So reactive is going to be loss of, an advocate internally, or change in budget internally with the client, right? Or maybe we're moving them to a different support tier, right? So that would be a trigger that came from the company side. And then proactive would be those milestones, right? Like they hit a success milestone of maybe we did a really great QBR and they got to present it to, their ELT, right? That would be a proactive one, some actions we can take after that.
And it's not just the proactive and the reactive plays themselves, that's the activities that are happening as well.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
I had a client that had a tool that they would sell to HR, and it required a live training event. And what they had discovered was that anybody who attended the live training event, if they had watched a 20-minute introductory video, they had a 95 to 99% adoption statistic. And so what we did is we changed the play for onboarding the customer to now include that, and that became a leading indicator. because the week prior to the live training, we could go to the executive stakeholder and say, hey, you know what? Only about 40% of your staff that's going to be on this training has consumed this video. And we show that, you're going to get value with the more people that use this. Right. So that became this leading indicator for that aspect of the customer journey.
And a great example of reverse engineering, right?
Yes.
You found something really good. Let's build Playbook around that.
Yeah. We actually, we found something, it was almost by mistake. Like, so what's this? And why does this have, and let's look at this data. Sometimes you just need to, this is the other thing of data science. If you have access to a data scientist, just have somebody start to look at your data and play with it and look for patterns and look for things that, talk about prioritizing plays or elements of plays. Data is your friend.
And you might have,
go find that person and buy them lunch, right?
On your CS team, you might even have a data geek, right? Like my background is research method and statistics.
Yeah.
Give me some data to mine. I'm a happy guy for the afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome.
Another important thing to go ahead, Josh.
No, I was going to go and say I take that same point of view and like you of studying the space too, of a master's of science in operations research, and that's how I go and look at customer success in the same way as you do, and even in the high touch environment, right? We talk about customer success and we have this idea that somehow we need to separate the tech and the low and the high touch, but they're complements for one another. And we can use these types of philosophies of tech touch and apply them all across the continuum.
Totally, Josh. Absolutely.
Exactly. Hey, can you hit done on that question for me,
Yeah,
Todd?
I can do it. Yep.
Awesome. All right, we're making progress here. Patrick's got another question. All right, and it's been upvoted. So Patrick asks, can we get an example of getting to time to first value scenario? Somebody want to jump in and maybe provide an example?
There are going to be features that you have in your feature set that you can consider to be quick wins. It should be something that can be stood up within a matter of minutes, and you can get immediate value out of. For example, here at Zoom, just launching a Zoom meeting and introducing myself to the customer, they're already in the system. They're already experiencing the value of having an in-person meeting using Zoom. So that right there can be a quick win when it comes to your time to value. So leveraging those quick wins can help you gain buy-in right from the very beginning.
Just as long as that, that value that you are, is within their focus for a desired outcome.
Yeah, there's certainly softwares we work with, right, where the time to value is way further out, like maybe has a really long installation or training, cycle. Like I've worked at places where it can be upwards of 6 months, right? And that's really difficult. And so I certainly hear that. So what we try to do is put little milestones along the way until we get to that value point in order to keep them really encouraged.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Just like we talk about our training tie, right? You want to demonstrate value as quickly as possible. And sometimes they don't realize that. Sometimes you need to lead them. Hey, this is the value. This is part of what are you getting it now? You got to explain it, right? And then you need to disseminate that information and distribute that information. Make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, don't ever be shy about not telling someone what you believe is bringing value to them. If you don't have that level of communication, they could very well think, oh, that's just standard process, right? Or
So let me add on to that, because one of the things you just said is that sometimes success criteria are heavily influenced by the CSM, especially when we look in this idea of time to first value, right? We didn't say this was time to success criteria. We said it's a thing where they get a thing, right? We're thinking like Pavlov and training the dog here.
Right.
Because in this situation, you're able to say, hey, look, we did a neat thing. In your case, Kevin, people are going and getting on to the Zoom call. Are there more configurations that they can do and fun backgrounds they can add and all these other things? Of course there are, right? But they went in and they got a little bit of that wow. They got a tiny reward of getting, seeing that feature done, and they can start to begin to see themselves going and implementing that.
That's the key. That's the key. They see they are able, it doesn't have to be the complete, desired outcome value, but they can see the path.
Right.
Yeah, we've rationed out our dopamine, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Via playbooks, via repeatable processes. And now we know when we're going to go and give the dog the treat, right? Yep. And we can try to break this into smaller pieces and keep them feeling that reward and keep that momentum going to get to the intended goal with all the configurations set.
Are you calling our customers dogs now?
Well, you remember I started by calling them cattle, right?
Yes,
that's how I opened up this.
You did, yes.
Yeah. So
Kevin, you got something?
Don't show us.
Well, one of the things, and culminating at what everybody is saying is we're trying to create this value progression and or this value story where we're creating value that builds on top of each other, and that's what's going to help us when we do have those long maturation stages where you might not be getting the full or even like maybe 50% of the value of your service for another 6 months. It's about creating this steady incline of value that's going to keep them interested, keep them coming to their cadence calls, and that's what you have to build into your campaigns or in your playbooks in order for you to maintain that interest from the customer. So that is something that you need to consider when you're building those playbooks.
Awesome. All right. We got another question here from Chandler. I like this question, Chandler. How do you build dynamic decision-making into a playbook? In other words, how do you balance a step-by-step plan versus a guide that enables people to think? Now, I've been a methodology hound for nearly 30 years, my approach is always prescriptive yet flexible, right? But how do you challenge people? How do you enable them to think beyond that basic framework? I mean,
I think when we're talking about playbooks, we're talking about guides to help you, not rules you have to live by. And I think with particularly people who are drawn to work in CS, right, we tend to be people who know when the decision needs to be different or we need to take a different approach. The playbook, again, isn't there to scold you for doing the wrong thing. It's to help make that process easier for you. If you think a different call needs to be made, you make it.
Right.
So.
Exactly. Anybody else want to add any thoughts, any best practices? Yeah. Hey, and end of the day, we hire people. We hire CSMs that are capable. They're capable of thinking, decision making, right? And if we're doing the right thing and we're hiring people with some EQ, right? That's all part of it. That, being self-aware, being able to control yourself and employ empathy and all of those things that are core skills to being effective in this job. It's all part of thinking, right? It's all part of thinking rationally, right? And this thing is just there it's like driving, right? Hey, well, maybe it's not. It's like driving Autopia at Disneyland, right? Those bumpers are there to keep you on the road, even if you don't have your hands on the wheel.
Yeah. I mean, I would just argue that anytime you do it, more often, right? If you find yourself veering from the path often, maybe it's something that you need to make sure to document because that can be helpful for other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. If I'm being pulled this way or my customer's being pulled that way, is that because we're not framing it right? We're not setting expectations correctly, or maybe we need to adjust and let it not be pulled. We just go in that direction.
Yeah.
And those are two areas of playbook creation that I think are largely ignored. Is how do you mitigate any kind of risks when you're launching the play? What are some of the things that you need to be cognizant of as warning signs for when the play is about to fail? So those are things that you need to be documenting. And then also, understand that just like how the play recreating the play or improving the play doesn't end, just because the play has ended for your customer doesn't mean that there isn't some maintenance that they need to do for them to continue to get the benefits of that play. So also including a maintenance section of what are the things that they need to keep doing in order for them to prolong the benefits of that play is something that you should have in that playbook.
Yeah, great point, Kevin.
And by the way, this documenting, when we talk about documenting and all this stuff, make sure you're constantly evolving. This doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah.
Okay. Especially when you use a tool like that CSEB or whatever it is, some sort of collaboration point where you're just making notes. Hey, you know what? I was able to, change this aspect of the play, and from 5 days to 3 days, the customer really appreciated it. Right? Just freaking add notes.
Iterative small wins.
Yeah, small wins, exactly. You're not constantly you're not in a constant state of fine tuning, right? You want to at some regularly spaced intervals kind of do an assessment of that sort of thing. And it's honestly, if we're hearing more and more about operations roles in customer success, this is one of the jobs that operations person should own, should be responsible for. We covered some of this, but I'm going to ask for any additional tips. Diego asks, what playbook tips would you have for a scale-up company? Where would you start looking for tips, advice?
I mean, I'm going to look to automation, right?
Hand off from sales to success, and then freaking automate, right?
Also, when we look in the goal for automation, I kind of look at this as like that whole capability maturity model idea, right? Do we have a plan? We have a plan. Do people know the plan? They know the plan. Have they walked the plan? They have walked the plan. And is it just kind of inculcated as something they go and do? And once they are doing that, you can look for these commonalities and steps across people and automate those things, right? Because the goal of that automation is to complement, not replace the CSM. Leave the humans to do what the humans need to do. Exactly. Obviously, your mileage may vary based upon the type of deployments that you're dealing with. But here we are again looking at the ability to go and just get started. That's the thing. And getting started, Andrew, like you said, at the handoff.
Yeah. And by the way, you don't just wave a magic wand and scale. You're going to probably have to do a lot of that initial stuff yourself manually, right?
Well,
and then like Ty mentioned and like Kevin mentioned, then you're going to go through and begin to replace, right? That repetitive stuff.
And that's a great point, because one of the things that I keep seeing in a lot of customer success discussions among leaders is they're already, when they just started their organization, already looking into customer success platforms. And if you do not have the foundations, you don't have your journey map, you don't have your processes defined, you are scaling nothing. You're paying.
That's a great
nothing.
point. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that you can't start looking at them, but like, I promise you, if you don't have to have detailed process either, but you got to have an idea of what it is you're trying to automate, right? Yeah, totally, 100% agree with you. I have a story about that, but we'll have to do that another time, and probably another forum, because I don't want it to get back to someone. What are the Femke asks, what are the most common pitfalls when creating a playbook? I can imagine confusing internal playbook versus external playbook, internal value versus value for the customer. Sure. I mean, I'm a fan of having a playbook, exposing different elements of it to customers. But not confusing the two. It's one of the reasons why I cringe when somebody says, well, we have an internal success plan and an external success plan for our customer. And that it makes me cringe, because like, okay, what happens when somebody shares the internal with the customer? I mean, the customer success plan should be about driving success for the customer. It should be something that's a collaboration point, something that anything on there you're going to, you should be able and willing to share with your customer.
100%.
Yeah.
To add that to that too, like the whatever the desired outcome for that internal customer success plan should be something that happens automatically as a result of your external success plan. So if you do extremely well when it comes to helping your customer reach their desired outcomes, it should result in them getting more licenses. It should result in them buying more. It should result in an increase in adoption. You don't have to worry about that internal playbook if you're executing very well on the external.
On the external playbook, exactly.
Go ahead, Josh. Okay.
You're
too polite.
Well, one of you go, because we got more questions and we're running out of time.
Well,
Josh.
All right, Kevin, I wanted just to go in and focus on one of the things that you added that sometimes we as customer success people don't necessarily look into, and that is to kind of put our executive hat on and look at things like the cost of revenue, right? I know historically customer success has been very defense oriented. Hey, don't churn, don't leave me. And more we're accepting the ideas of playing offense, where we're being able to clear the path for that expansion, cross-sell, upsell, whatever it might be. And the playbooks allow you to do that, again, across the company, like we've talked about, having everyone work in concert and move the company's metrics in the direction that we want.
Right, which is the ultimate, always the ultimate objective. Okay, and we got another one here. We're closing in on the end of time here, but I want to bring up Angelo's question for a CSM in mid-market. My book of business encompasses 45 to 65 accounts. Do you recommend creating a playbook for each account?
No,
No,
not at all. That is not a scalable process.
No.
What I would recommend is when I build my playbooks, I do like to take a look at the play and think about it in different terms of segments. So look for some commonality between some of your accounts and create a playbook across that. So if you have 65 accounts and 20 of them are a particular vertical, let's say healthcare, build a redefine one of your playbooks that focuses more on that healthcare customer. And then that becomes a lot more scalable, because now you're attacking 30% of your book of business versus one of your book of business. So try to look for those opportunities, look for the commonality between your different customers, and build your playbooks accordingly.
Focus on the commonality.
Yeah, and look at what you've talked about, right? It's the idea of like a recipe when baking bread, right? You have the template, the thing that's there, but if you want to go and add something a little bit different, the implementation of that recipe is what you'll be looking to do per the question 45 to 65 times.
Yeah.
The other thing I like to do with these is build out campaigns. So let's say that play might be expansion or low adoption, whatever that might be. And I want to set up some automation in there so I can allow certain triggers to allow me to put them into those campaigns, and that there's some automation behind that, because really 65 accounts is a ton to manage, right? And you don't have time to write 65 emails to trigger something, right?
How can you segment your segment? Right, that's the first thing I would look at. Right, can I come up with 80% of that 65 accounts that are all going to resonate with the same message? All right, boom. I just took care of that. Right. And if that leaves me, a handful of accounts that need a more high touch for this aspect of the customer journey, then I have the time. I see automating things, building for scale, whether you are no touch or whether you are high touch. It allows you to free up the time for you to do more strategic things.
Which stresses the importance of CS ops people. If you don't have one, advocate for one. And if you have one, get to know them really well. Like they keep the lights on for us.
Yes. And the best way to do that is provide feedback about the process.
Absolutely.
Provide feedback about the methodology, whatever it is. Hey, I tweaked this and with this customer, and this is what the result was.
Well, and I would say, just like with an engineer, I don't like to come with what I think the solution should be, because they have different brains that work different. I want to tell them what I'm trying to solve for and let them use those big, beautiful brains to tell me how we're possibly to get to the answer. And same with CS ops. Go with, this is what I'm trying to solve for. let them use their skills, knowledge, and experience to find a good way to get us to that solve.
Exactly. Let them do their job and exercise that creativity. All right, let's see. I got time for one more question. Playbook Earshad asks, the playbook includes professional services, but not customer success architects. In my past experience, customer success architects pair up with a CSM to ensure that each role is focusing on the outcome we're looking for. What are your thoughts on customer success architects and how you would map it into this playbook? It depends. We don't understand. Unfortunately, we don't have time to kind of dive into, well, what is a customer success architect in your world, and who are your customers and what are you selling, and too many. Sorry, man. Too many variables left. Let's see here. I think that's all we got for now. I don't see anything else. I don't see anything else we need to talk about. So we're at the end of our webinar. I think it went well, but it's not what I think or my participants, who once again happen to be on the CS 100 this year. So make sure to vote for them.
And congratulations to everyone.
But
congratulations to y'all too.
But it's what all of you think. So please let us know by posting your feedback on LinkedIn and tagging either myself or Success Coaching or any one of these folks. I want to thank you all for spending the time with us, and for the thoughts and the insights and the ideas, the best practices that you shared. I thought that this was going to be a great conversation, and I think we talked about a lot of great stuff and shared some great ideas, and people got value out of it. So one final note: great CSMs know that they don't have all the answers, but they know where to get them, and that's why we created the CSM Mastermind, to harness the knowledge and experience of the community to help improve everyone. So once again, we hope you got something out of this discussion, and we'll see you at our next event on October 20th, when we'll be talking about driving customer focus within your organization. Until we see you again, have a great rest of your day, week, and month. Stay safe and stay healthy, everyone.